national politics. There is an election this year, so like everything, you just have to stomach it and get on with the job. But I think from an officer point of view, it's worth mentioning that a lot of hard work is done, and you are actually effectively, it's like steering a car but only being able to use the rear view mirror to do so, and that is a very, very difficult task. So again, I pay tribute to our finance team and to Louise and the team in particular, to try and piece this together and actually help us plan for the future. So what the report tells us, in short, is that given that challenge, given the financial pressures that obviously the council is under, that we are able to balance our budget, and we're able to balance our budget in a number of ways. That is through a increase in council tax, which, as you can see, is proposed at 2.99%, which is what the government have allowed this year councils to raise it by, without reference to any sort of referendum or anything like that. In addition, we look at some of the savings and the revenue income streams that we continue to benefit from, and we balance the books ultimately by using one of our reserves, which is designated specifically for inflationary pressures coming out of the post-pandemic, and obviously utility cost rises, etc., that we face. So we did have a specific reserve set aside for that, for those issues. So we're using sort of just over £300,000 of that. But what that means, in essence, is that the council can continue on its programme, continue to deliver the priorities that we outlined in the corporate plan in November of last year, and continue to make sure that we address the real needs of residents. And it says that in the report quite clearly, where we look at the plan investment priorities that we had this year and how they tie into the investment priorities for 24-25. And you can see there that all our key themes of housing, green and sustainable borough, enterprise economy, and health and safe engaged communities, they're all there, and you can, the specific schemes, earmarked amounts that are attached to those schemes as well. So I think what this allows the council to do is to continue with its work, continue to invest into supporting some of the most vulnerable people in our community, whether that's through the social prescribing service or the health and wellbeing programme. We continue to support businesses and those benefits in rural areas or in our urban areas. We continue to look at helping people with you know, the drive towards dealing with the cost of living and the energy costs and so on. We continue to work on the green agenda and invest there to help hopefully improve the quality of life in the borough. And we continue to support improvements in housing standards, which again we've identified as a key priority. So the budget facilitates all of that, and as I say, we look then to sort of plan for the future, and that's where again the future challenge comes, because despite all the work that's been done, despite the revenue that's come in from all our investments, which I think when I totaled up the revenue, it came to about £2.3 million. So that's after paying the borrowing costs. That's what, for want of a better word, profit. And I think that also begs the question that had we not done that, what position would we be in now? It would be making severe cuts. So thanks to the foresight of this council, thanks to the investments we've made, we actually continue to be able to be in a strong position. We're not in a position where many other councils face bankruptcy and issuing Section 114 notices. We're not in a position where we're proposing cuts in frontline services. So we are able to continue, and I think that's, again, a very strong position to be in. But moving forward, you have to look at the future. And as I say, next year, you can see there that there's still a £1.5 million budget gap. So that's a big challenge for the council. We have to look at how we're going to bridge that gap, whether that's more increasing revenue sources, more efficiencies and savings within the organisation, more opportunities to work with partners to provide services, again, at a reduced cost. So we have to explore all options, all alternatives, and that's, again, what's proposed in this report as to how we will bridge that gap in the future. And I am sure that, like always, we will find a way to continue to put the priority of the residents at the forefront of what we do, and balance the budget. But each year it gets harder and harder, Chair, given the world in which we live. So on that basis, that's a sort of brief overview of what we're proposing, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Any comments or questions on that report? Because obviously this is the draft budget that's going out to consultation, and we will come back in February at the council to discuss the full budget in due course. Any questions or comments? Nobody's showing anything, in which case you did a very good job of explaining it, and we'll see what the residents of Chorley think of it when we send it out for consultation. Oh, Councillor Morwood. No, they're not. They're all stuck in front of me. There's no hands up.
Try this one. Just to reiterate what you said, we are a far-sighted organisation who looks and takes, tough decisions at the right time, and I think we've benefited from that, as Councillor Wilson has just said. And it's good that our officers and the councillors all work together for the benefit of the people of Chorley. And sometimes it's hard, and it will get harder, but we are where we are, and we're compared to many organisations, many councils, we're in a very good position. Maybe not as good as we would like, but much better than some. So I'll say no more than that.
Noted, and I must get weekly emails from the District Councils Network, from the LGA, saying if you are in this situation of, you're facing something 114, you're in a terrible financial state, please get in touch and join this group and that group and the other group. And we haven't done, feel a bit left out at times, but I am more than happy to be left out of those discussions because we aren't facing those problems. So, but we also do have, a bigger gap coming down the line. So, but for this year, we are consulting on this year's budget, and that's what's going to go out. So thank you for that. So the recommendations are in paragraph 3, which Councillor Wilson outlined. So he's proposed that. Is somebody happy to second those proposals? Thank you, Councillor Lowe. All those in favour, please show. Good. That's carried through, and that will now go out to consultation. So thank you for that. Excellent. We then romp on to item 5, which is the fees and charges, which is really associated with the budget papers, really. And this is Councillor Wilson again.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, in the context of what we've just reported in the financial challenges, obviously, we do look at our own fees and charges, and I think we've discussed this in the past, and the need to make sure that, obviously, while not looking to just, while one doesn't want to just increase them for the sake of it, obviously inflation has been rising over the past 12 months, and we need to make sure that we keep pace with that, with those rises, and also keep pace with the general cost provision, which obviously has to factor in salary increases, etc., of our staff providing services. So I will just, although it is there, and obviously members can read it, I do think just so we're clear on what we're proposing, I'll just go through the recommendations, if I may. So the first is the uplift in the Strawberry Field service charge of £1 per square foot. So that, again, as it says there, is very clear to actually make sure that we actually cover the costs incurred. And now that we've got more tenants in there, we're very much clearer as to what the exact costs are. So we do believe that will help us cover the cost of the provision of the services that you get in the service charge bill. Secondly, in terms of housing, this is to uplift the rents of all council-owned housing, including extra care, but not Cotswold House, at 7.7%. And again, that's following on from last year's decision that we made, or 2 years ago really, that we made about increasing rents by CPI plus 1%. So that is what 7.7, that's where 7.7 comes from. And again, when we look at the service charges at those facilities, we see that actually they are currently covered, so we don't propose any extra increase on the service charges, just on the rents. In terms of Cotswold, which is separate, we're looking there at just over 3% increase in rents, and the service charge at 7.5%. But more importantly is the reduction in personal charge. And the reason I say more importantly, of course, is because for those on housing benefit, the service charge as well as the rent, of course, is covered. But of course, the personal charge isn't. So the fact that the personal charge is coming down will actually hopefully be of benefit to our residents. And I think when later in the reports, point 28 there, it actually says that overall, when you factor all those things together, the overall increase is just 3%, or just over 3%. So not that that's to be obviously a decision taken lightly, but it is a smaller increase than perhaps what you may think as you read the report on the face of it. The Lancastrian, clearly that again, that percentage increase is to make sure we're covering our costs. Obviously, a lot of events in the Lancastrian are weekends or out of hours, so of course the staffing costs are quite high there. And as we know, again, those have risen. We've had to soak that up. So again, it's important to keep pace. In terms of the community centres on point 7, again, you can see there at point 32 in more detail. I really think that the community centre charges have fallen well behind But we do, of course, make that caveat about the groups who will use it. So you can see there that on point 32, it makes reference there to the voluntary-led group, rather, when I try and speak properly, and it defines it there. So, of course, that will be a different charge for those types of groups. But we do have a number of people who use it, commercial operators or those that have got a group and organisations that are reasonably well funded. So, again, there's the fact that you could maybe charge something like £5 for an hour for a large room in a community centre is way too low. I'll be quite clear. We need to charge more than that for a reason, but it's still actually good value even with the percentage increases that we're proposing. But clearly, it needs to keep pace. We're actually subsidising to greater deal the community centre hire. The next is the allotments, where we're looking at two different charges there. One for those with water and the ones that have access to water, and their increase there of £12.80, and then a slightly more modest increase for those without water. Clearly, there the definition is clear for all to see as to why that's just different charges. In terms of licensing and other fees, again, that's covered, being increased there, as well as a general increase in fees at 6.7%, as it says. The last point that I will cover on this, or the last 2 points rather, Astley Hall, as it says, will be reviewed during the year, so we'll come to that, but that's not being proposed now. That's all we are seeking approval for from the Cabinet tonight, Chair. But obviously in the report as well is the recommendation which will go to Council, which is for the garden waste collection. And that is a proposal to go from £32.50 to £37.50, so that's an increase of £5. As it says there on point 31, or if you're over the page on page 28, you can see the comparisons, and it's not about a comparison league table as such, but I think it does make it important when you look at what other councils charge to see whether you think you are charging what is a reasonable ask, let's say. And I think even with the increase, we are still in the lower half of what councils charge, and therefore I think that is a reasonable ask. And of course, to remind people, it is an opt-in service. It is not forced upon people. It is an opt-in service. So again, when we look at the actual amount of money involved, I think it says in the report something like 10p a week. Like any increase, you don't want to do it if you don't have to, but given the financial circumstances, I think the income that will raise, which is £125,000 for what is a relatively modest amount of 10p a week, is a request that we think is a reasonable ask. So at that point, Chair, I think that's the sort of broad brush of what we're actually proposing. Obviously, there might be plenty of detail that members wish to explore, but that's an overview in its entirety.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. There are 34 pages of detail if you wish to read them, members, and I'm sure many of you have. There's a lot to take in there. Any comments, questions? Councillor Law, straight in.
Thanks, Chair. Obviously, I'm showing up as Councillor Murray for some strange reason.
Don't worry, I'm not offended.
We all have a dream, don't we, Councillor Law? We all have a dream.
I always succumb to my better half. The recommendation for garden waste obviously will come to the budget meeting because it forms part of the previous item and the £125,000 potential increase in fees for that, and so we'll obviously await that. Just a couple of points to make on that. It'll be interesting to see and concur exactly what Peter's mentioned in terms of it is a subscription service. We factor in that we currently have around 25,000 subscribers. It'll be interesting to see what impact it has in terms of if there is any drop in the number of subscribers, and therefore the knock-on effect, if I've got my financial head on, to actually achieve the savings that we're intending to do. So we'll just await that consultation, Chair. But in terms of the whole package of fees and charges, that I suspect that at this time next year, there will be a whole more series of radical options that whoever is whether it's Peter coming up with, because obviously what the previous item suggested and the £1.5 million shortfall, then we may have some unpalatable decisions to make, because the whole series of fees and charges right across the spectrum, I would await at the earliest possible opportunity in the next budgetary cycle.
Noted, and yeah, we'll see where we get to with that. Councillor France, first.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just interested looking at the figures for Tatton Gardens. I'm surprised it's only 2/3 occupied, because Primrose Gardens filled up very rapidly from memory. Do we think that it's going to achieve full occupancy shortly? Because that will obviously help with the financial status of that. And the other thing that struck me was there's no mention in here of Whittle Surgery. Is that generating income, and are their fees going to be put up in line with the rest? Thank you.
I'll answer the one about Tatton Gardens, if that's okay. Are you happy with that?
Go on, you start then, go on.
So Tatton Gardens, I understand it. Two things. One is it will be full. Two things. There was a leak just before Christmas, which delayed some people moving in, which is one of those things when you have a new building, leaks happen. And that delayed some of people moving in. And also we've actually let some property to people who then have exited permanently, i.e. they died. So the rent is still paid, the occupancy rate is going up, but we have to then recycle those units. So that's an occupational hazard, unfortunately, of the age demographic we have in those, and it's the same in Primrose Gardens. So yes, we are confident it will be full. There is large demand for it. It's just been slower to get filled up for a number of reasons. So yeah, and on the issue to do with
On Whittle, we're not proposing any increase in the rent, because obviously that's a commercial operate. You know, what we mentioned here, rents, is obviously housing rents. We don't mention commercial, we're not mentioning any commercial rents about Market Walk or anything else. So that's the commercial rent that we've already set. As far as I know, they operate independently in that building, so we don't have a service charge for that. We don't provide any services to that above and beyond the normal, you know, bin collection or whatever. So no, that's not part of this. No.
I've got Councillor Gray and then Councillor Howard. So go
Yeah,
on.
it was mentioned on North West News, which made a surprise. I nearly fell off the chair. You know, I've never seen Charlie mentioned on the news before.
I'm sure we have been used before for many things, Councillor Gray, but
It's a hell of a long while since, because I think they forget Charlie's here, you know. But it did mention it about, it showed a graph of the
Watch BBC Breakfast News on Tuesday.
BBC Breakfast News.
On Tuesday. This coming Tuesday. Tune in.
Forgot when it were I saw that graph, and it showed Charlie, you know, one of the cheapest.
so Councillor Gray, you were praising us for being low on our council tax, were you?
Oh yeah,
The BBC were.
well, more
Well,
or
we'll
less,
see
like,
if they're
it
still
showed-
praising us on Tuesday when Councillor
It did.
Wilson's on the telly talking about our approach to
Yeah, it made it stand out like on the telly, you know.
right, debt recovery is what we'll be discussing on Tuesday. Okay, which again is seen as a shining beacon from what I'm hearing, but we'll see if that's what the BBC think of it next Tuesday. Good luck with that. Councillor Howard.
Just a little update on Tatton Gardens. Things have moved along quite positively and quickly. Report we had last week very strongly suggests, in fact, indicates that there are far more applicants than there are places. It's just a case of going through them, and the actual process itself can't be the quickest. It's not just as if people can move in immediately. They've got to work out arrangements for the previous accommodation, sometimes waiting for it to be sold. But it's very positive.
Good stuff. That's excellent news. Any other questions or comments on the fees and charges report? He says, looking in the room. No. In that case, the recommendations are copious. They are paragraphs 2 to 13, and then obviously we have to do number 14 as well. So Peter's proposed those. Somebody happy to second those proposals? Councillor Morwood has shown. All those in favour, please show. That's carried. Thank you. Okay, we move now on to item 6, which is again Councillor Wilson. I said we would hear a lot from him this evening. Payment strategy.
Thanks, Chair. So the report outlines the proposals for the payment strategy, and this is being brought now because we need to update the council's strategy and make it sure that it is fit for purpose in the modern world in which we live, so that it's actually easier, more efficient in terms of for the customer, and actually that we actually use our digital platforms accordingly, because many people now use the phones on demand services, and we believe that the council should be no different than that. That's what people expect. And that's where we need to move to. So the technology is there, clearly it is there, because like I say, other organisations, companies use it. It's important that we can provide the same level of service. And of course, by doing the whole operation more efficiently and online, it's obviously it helps the council, but as I say, in terms of its efficiency and savings. What is important, obviously, because it's something that members raise quite often, is that if members of the public don't have access to any means of using online facilities, you can still pay in cash. Clearly, that is it is important, and it does mention that quite clearly. Albeit the vast majority of people do use online services, but even so, it's important that those who haven't got access continue to do so. So I'm quite confident that the proposals included in the report will actually make, hopefully, business easier for our customers. And what that will also do is I'll probably encourage even more people to use those platforms, because if it's easy and it is efficient and it works, it'll help transition more. That again benefits the council in the future. Obviously, there are issues with dealing with cash. There are issues in terms of training people accordingly. But as I say, the commitment is still there that we will not exclude anyone if they haven't got those means. But it's about recognising the world in which we live and making sure that our systems are fit for purpose, and that people then can be confident that transacting with the council is easy and quick and works very, very well, and hopefully encourage more to use those platforms as well. And that, in a nutshell, is the proposal in front of us.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Yeah, I think the important paragraphs will be paragraphs 14 to 16, which details that a number of councils have said they won't take cash payments. We're not one of those. Union Street is our designated place for taking cash payments, but within half a mile of Union Street, there are 16 outlets that will take cash, which aren't us, but will take it on our behalf. And there are another 69 all across the entire borough, which will take it. So that's one of the features, that people can actually don't have to go to Union Street to pay cash. They can go and pay cash in plenty of other places, probably closer to them and more handy and more convenient, and probably less congested for parking. So it's about options, isn't it? And giving residents options is what we're all about. So on that basis, any comments, questions, or further items on that report? Yes, Councillor Morwood, you're on fire tonight.
Just a
Carry on.
comment, really. I think it's very appropriate that we keep cash at this time, because I mean, it was only a couple of years back that we were saying cash is going out. We're all using checks and back payments and all this. But because of the financial situation as it is, the reports seem to come back that more and more people are sort of going to cash and allocating so much to this, so much to that, so much to the other. So I think at this moment in time, it's important to keep the cash going. There will come a time when it works through and so forth, but I think especially at this time it's quite important. And I'm intrigued by paragraph 14, Hyndburn. I like that comment. Only as a last resort. I just have this vision of somebody with cash and the other side saying, "No, we don't take it. But I've only got cash. I don't care about it. Oh, go on then." I mean, I know it's frivolous, but it's a kind of strange.
And the frivolous
comment,
answer, and I'm aware I'll be filmed in Hyndburn. I imagine there's many things that are only as a last resort, but let's leave it at that. It might be a standard comment for many questions you ask in Hyndburn, but anyway. But as somebody who comes from Oswald originally, I can't comment on things that happen in Hyndburn. Councillor Law.
Yeah, just to add to the comments you made, Chair, in terms of paragraph 12 and 13, we only currently do 10 transactions roughly per week, and also paragraph 13 about the cost implications. So we're still maintaining that capability or that service whilst publicising the actual number of extensive outlets all the way through the borough, as well as close to the town centre. So I'm all in favour of the payment strategy, retaining the cash element, but trying to encourage, which we've already adopted anyway, is the strategy of trying to do the majority of our transactions by contactless.
Noted. Noted. That's fine. Any other questions or comments on that report? No. In that case, we are asked to approve the recommendation made by Councillor Wilson in paragraph 2 that we implement that payment strategy. Somebody second that, please. Councillor Law, yeah. All those in favour, please show. Good. That's done. Thank you. Item 7 is the updated holiday activity and food delivery approach. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Chair. So this report seeks to change the proposal previously agreed at Cabinet by doing two things. The Council to retain the management fee to fund a dedicated resource within the communities team to recruit a HAF coordinator, and that the remaining funding would then be managed through a grant fund delivered in 2 tiers. The higher tier would engage with the well-established organisations to secure core delivery, and the lower tier would seek to engage more grassroots organisations in local communities. I'm sure you've all read the report, but the underlying change is that if the council have the coordinator, we get the information on who's accessing HAF earlier, and if there is any families that are particularly struggling, it means that we have an earlier opportunity to help. And the other benefit of this is, although in the past HAF have had some, that was quite tricky, have had some activities in the rural areas and villages, this helps to encourage more local delivery. So essentially, the change is about early intervention and widening the offer and hopefully therefore participation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Murray. And for those, again, watching the video, the reason that the video occasionally misnames the councillor, you all sat one place up from where the figures were laid out. So there's a seat at the end, and then you swap the things around. So you're all
It's all
interchangeable, but it's all right. We know who you are. People at home may be confused slightly, but you've caused Matthew all kinds of problems. But he's dealing with it. He's dealing with it manfully, and he's far too polite to say anything to you, but I will. So sit where you're told in future. Right. Thank you, Councillor Murray. That's great. Any questions on that report, please? No questions, no comments? I can't see anybody online with a hand up. In that case, yeah, great report. Recommendations are detailed in paragraphs 3 and 4, which Councillor Murray has proposed. Would somebody second those? Thank you, Councillor France. All those in favour, please show. Excellent, good stuff. Right. We move on to item 8, which is the exclusion of the public and press, because we're going to consider a report about software services procurement. So I'm happy to move that we exclude the public and press. Can somebody second that, please? Yep. And then all those in favour, please show. Right, we will